welcome to day 2 of the Brighteye Edtech Startup Festival. After 2 sessions yesterday focused on product and impact, watch out for the recordings that will be shared shortly. We're looking forward to another 2 sessions today. This one on people, and for this afternoon, we're diving into marketing. Just a quick word on Brighteye, who's hosting this. We are an early stage edtech fund investing in seed and Series A across Europe. We announced the closing of our Fund 2 at 100 million euros earlier this summer, and we are, of course, always looking to connect with you founders and edtech teams out there. My name is Hege, and I'm head of community at Brighteye, working on our portfolio support, communications, and events like this festival. Thanks all for joining on this panel on people, with a particular focus on building out the company engineering function. I'm happy to introduce Hywel Carver, who is co-founder and CEO at Brighteye portfolio company Hywel, who will be moderating this conversation. Over to you, Hywel, and enjoy.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Hege, and good morning to everyone. As I think everyone is aware, we are going to be talking in a second with the panel about what to think about when you build out the engineering function of your company. I think this is a really critical question for startups, because the engineering function is often one of the most expensive functions of the company. It's often the one that can hold back progress most, because engineering is slow. It's much slower to implement changes in engineering than in many other aspects of what the company does. And it can be something of an impenetrable black box as well. Unless you are an engineer or a technical person yourself, it can be very hard to see inside that box. And so building out the engineering function in the right way is really critical for success. I'll introduce myself quickly, and then I'll hand over to the rest of the panel to introduce themselves. So my name's Hywel, as Hege said. I'm one of the founders of Hywel. I was a CTO in startups and scale-ups for 10 or 12 years before starting Hywel, and I coached CTOs as well. And one of the kind of biggest problems I always found was that I wanted a form of learning that could make my team ship better code faster, and it turned out not to exist. And so we developed Hywel as a way of building it. We realized we had to rethink what learning looked like from the ground up, because most learning was very much targeted at like people following their interests, and we wanted learning that was going to make companies more money. And so we kind of rethought the ideas of learning, built a company around them, and now we're scaling up and growing and helping other companies make more money. And we're very pleased that Brighteye is part of that journey. They've been a supportive and great investor to us. I want to hand over to each of our panel. We've got Roxana, Andrew, and Jessica with us today from 3 other companies. And maybe Roxana, let's go with you first. Welcome.
Good morning, everyone. Or good day, depending from where you are logging in. And greetings from Spain. I am based in Valencia, and where we have an amazing weather today. Just a bit of intro about myself. We are in the people panel, so I will start with something personal, obviously. I am actually very happy because today I'm celebrating 20 years of marriage. So you will see me flying around with a lot of stamina and buzz. But on a more serious note, I am working in the HR arena for the last 20 years. Coincidence or not. And I've been working with multinational for the first time side of my career. And after that, I kind of felt the interesting, jazzy style of working with startups and scale-ups. So for the last 7-8 years, I'm working with great growth teams, with really smart founders, trying to articulate those learnings and best practices when it comes to how do you take something from a brilliant idea and make a legacy out of it. Still learning, still on that learning curve. Important for, in terms of areas of interest, I would say that leadership development, like everything in the span of performance and talent are my cup of tea. Obviously, building global playbooks, it's what I am trying to refine for the last couple of good years. And this is where I see my passion for the next years to come as well. Very happy to join you today. Thank you for the invite.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Roxana. And the traditional gift for a 20-year anniversary is China. I can't ship any to you, but I can raise a cup of tea in celebration.
Cheers.
Andrew, you're next on my screen, so over to you, please.
Delighted to be here. Unfortunately, I cannot celebrate 20 years of marriage. I can celebrate around about 6 weeks of marriage. So I will be catching up with you if you just give me a little bit of time. In terms of my own background, I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Komi, obviously working very closely with Brighteye. Our business is all around creator economy, so we work with some of the world's largest creator talent. So that's a really exciting space to be in that we've been for the last couple of years. Alongside my role as COO, I also run the engineering team here at Komi, and I was responsible for building that up from scratch. So I sort of made the first engineering hires and built the team out, built out the structure, and kind of had some pretty interesting learnings along the way in terms of hiring engineers and building them sort of the team up for success. Similarly, still learning. So no claim here to be the master, but hopefully some of our learnings can help people avoid the pitfalls we've had along our own journey. In terms of my background before Komi, I was at another Series A startup as general manager. Before that, I was at Uber, sort of latterly running Uber Eats in London. So that was my role as head of London. And before that, as with many people in tech, I kind of started in banking and then sort of escaped that after 5 years and then moved across into the tech scene. So that's who I am.
Awesome. Thanks, Andrew. And then Jessica, rounding off our panel, last but by no means least.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me well? Yeah, because I'm never sure with that. I work in tech, but I'm not good at tech, and especially hardware. I'm Jessica. So I celebrate 3 years of marriage this year. I got married during COVID, so that was a very challenging time. Thank you. And now I work for myself, but I'm launching an HR consultancy firm based in Lyon, France, but I work mainly with Parisian startups. I had the pleasure of working with a company backed by Brighteye called Ornikar. I think it's one of the largest companies that Brighteye is helping. And so it was a situation that you mentioned, Hywel, where none of the founders were tech people. So hiring and scaling the tech team was very challenging. And before that, I worked at various startups at various stages. One of the biggest one was Photobox, which was not a startup any longer at the time, but was still functioning like one. My first years of my career was in recruitment, and then I switched to a more generalist role and ending up being a chief people officer in different companies, mainly in the French tech ecosystem, with working with HQ in France and with subsidiaries everywhere.
Awesome. So a real range of backgrounds and perspectives here, and I'm hoping that we're going to give a lot of the things we've learned so far, but hopefully also be learning from each other, as a couple of people have pointed out. I don't think any of us feel like we have the absolute final right answers, but I think between us we'll definitely be able to give some different perspectives and help you, the audience at home or at work, understand some more about organizing your engineering function. So to start with, I think it would be good to think just structurally about the shape of an engineering team. So how should startups think about structuring their teams beyond simply the CTO or whoever is leading the engineering function? And I think if you've got something to say, just jump in and say it, rather than go around everyone in turn. I think let's try a bit of a free for all.
We're all going to be too shy to go first. Why don't I give you a quick answer, and I'm sure my colleagues can give a more detailed one with their experience. I kind of think that the two principles that I think are really important, one is about ownership, and one is about kind of jobs to be done. And what I mean by that is, I'm a big advocate of trying to push as much of the ownership, decision-making, kind of day-to-day running of domains down into the lowest level that can sort of sensibly own those things. You don't want it to be everything has to go up to senior leadership. I'd much rather say, okay, you're the team in charge of X, so I want you to be taking leadership of that domain and making good decisions and justifying the decisions rather than asking for permission. And that kind of comes to that second principle of jobs to be done. If you can take your business and divide it up into concrete jobs to be done, which could be, particular parts of the product. It could be particular aspects, such as the shared services or the infrastructure or whatever else, if you can carve up the product in that kind of logically consistent way, and then create teams around each of those subdomains, and then empower those teams to kind of own their area, I think you tend to get a pretty good result, because you actually tend to be able to move quicker. You have people that have a lot of passion about their area, and you're actually able to, put the decisions close to where the information is, rather than try and move the information to where the decision maker is. And so kind of come back to how do you structure the team, we can get into the concrete nitty-gritty of like management to individual contributor ratios, and how many meetings do they have in a week, and how do they work with design. But I think the core theory for me is these two principles of pushing down ownership and then dividing up into domains based around jobs to be done.
I can only build on that. Obviously, there is no ideal structure in here, and the software industry, we have not yet managed to find that like best practice recipe, although we are trying to fine tune it. I would say that it's really important to start with what are you trying to achieve. Is it speed to market? Is it technical excellence? Like, are you trying to innovate? Like, why? What is the end game here? And based on that, you are going to articulate what specific skills you need in the team, and like trying to understand, okay, like what is it going to be in a horizontal sort of team that is really focused on technical architectures? Is it going to be a rather product vertical team structure? Are you going to work in a metrics sort of setup that is going to feed better, at least for a certain specific time, your need? I would start with the why. In my experience so far, the integrated product teams were the ones that actually made it through. So where you have people from different disciplines working together in a sort of cross-functional product team. But I'm keen to see if Andrew would would agree or not, or Jessica on this avenue.
Yeah, I think maybe I'm responding to the questions a bit further along the line, but there's also the soft skills to think about, and the flexibility of the profiles. Even in my company, it's only a 2-people team, and hiring the third one is already a challenge, because we know that tech people know what they want, and they are very strict about their demands and the type of job they want to do, etc. But when you are starting, when you are launching the business, you need to have people who are maybe a bit more open-minded and flexible about what they're going to be doing, because their job is going to change drastically. You cannot promise them a career plan very, very detailed from the hiring date. So I would also think of the type of culture and mindset I'm looking for. So this is not just an organizational issue, but also a personal issue.
Yeah, I think I completely agree with everything that's being said there. So a very common way to structure teams is what used to be called feature teams, sometimes called product teams. Spotify branded them as squads, but it's essentially having an autonomous, empowered, cross-functional group of people. Amazon call this 2 pizza teams, and the idea being that it's like 6 to 10 people who are working on a single thing at a time. I have a funny story I can talk about another time about an investor in another country who required all of his companies to have 2 pizza teams, and was encouraging them to just fire all of their staff because there needed to be 2 pizza teams. It turns out that in that country, in India, pizzas are much smaller than in America, and so the advice did not really translate that well to another country. I also think you see, as startups evolve, you see extra layers of structure coming in. So typically you add a layer of leadership, you add things like team leads and people who in each team are responsible for delivery. Then people add layers of management. So that's often when you hire your head of engineering, VP of engineering, and eventually engineering managers. And then there's a kind of layer of engineering excellence that gets added in the kind of staff engineer, senior staff engineer type roles, architect type roles. And when you're a bit further down the line, you've got kind of 80, hundreds of people in your teams, and you're starting to think about those kind of concerns as well. But this is great. I feel like we've all given a different kind of perspective on structure. Does anyone have any final thoughts before I move on to another question? All right, in that case, I'm going to talk this is something that everyone has already touched on a little bit, actually. I think it's worth thinking about what the right people look like, particularly in startups, where we're probably looking for a different kind of profile to people who aren't in startup land, who are in more kind of traditional enterprises. So what is the difference between a great hire and a merely good or average hire, as far as a startup is concerned? Roxana, you were unmuting, so I'm going to call on you first.
Without knowing the question, but like, this is a really juicy question. So, and obviously it's the bread and butter of whatever we are trying to do here, right? Because at the end of the day, you need to have an amazing product, great technology, and a really good, talented group of people who are standing by you in the journey. So what makes it in between great and outstanding, right? That's the question. And specifically for the engineers, but not only. I think the first thing I would put in here, it's the growth mindset. And it's very tricky because, you know, you can still hear it in the startup world on like people that are unhappy because the priorities are changing too quickly. And that's funny for me because that's the definition of a startup in a scale-up environment, right? Like you must be ready to change and like seek the opportunities and be able to pivot and adapt. So that piece of, you know, adaptability, change agility, craving for feedback, going in this journey to mastery, I think that's one of the key aspects that would differentiate. For engineers specifically, speaking with a lot of my colleagues in engineering leadership roles, I think it's keeping it simple. And I think for engineers, this is can be a complicated stuff. So I look at a great engineer or someone who is making a habit of working on a code or touching a code and keeping it clear and simple and being extremely customer focused at the same time as being technology focused. So this part of keeping it simple and supporting people that are working with them in seeking this clarity and not overcomplicating the solution, I think it's key. I remember there was a quote, I forgot who said it, but I remember, like, I'm paraphrasing. It was something around the fact that fools can write a code that computers can understand, but great engineers can write a code that humans can understand. And that for me, it's a great engineer. Just to start with two features that I believe would actually make the difference.
Yeah, definitely. For anyone who's interested in that topic, computer science genius Donald Knuth wrote a paper called Literate Programming, which is exactly what you were just saying, Roxana. The idea that we shouldn't just write code that that computers can understand, but really this is a team sport. We need to write code that other humans can understand. Andrew, maybe I'll call on you next because you're next on my screen.
Perfect. Look, I think I didn't mention this, but my academic background was in philosophy, or partially in philosophy, and I think therefore I will start by just attacking the question, because I think if you say what makes someone great, the correct answer to that question is, well, what do we mean by greatness? And I think the reality is that greatness is kind of related to what you need at the time. I can't remember who actually mentioned that, like knowing what you want to achieve. But like you can be great in more than one way, right? And so you can be great because you really, you can just solve problems that no one else can solve, or you can be great equally because you're a wonderful coach and teacher of others, or you can be great because you really lift the morale of the team, or you can be great because you are someone who's never afraid to help, if someone needs support, or you're someone who like puts the team above themselves. So I think with questions like that, which are kind of vaguely formulated, I would probably turn it around and say, the best way to think about that question is to understand what you as a company need right now, and then look for someone who excels at that thing. So if, for example, you've hired your first 5 engineers and you tested them all and they're all very strong engineers, but social cohesion is poor, you need a different thing than if, for example, you have got 10 to 20 engineers and everyone's happy and working hard, but actually you could really do with someone who is like world-class technical expertise to help lift the others. And so I think probably my answer to what makes someone great is greatness really comes from being able to solve the problem you have right now and being able to create more value than you would create in isolation. So it's really a, sporting cliche about horses for courses, or it's the whole is the greater than the sum of its parts. There's plenty of aphorisms about it, but I think there's no one thing that makes people great. Greatness comes from a combination of people who complement each other and who are able to produce something more than any of them could have produced in isolation.
Yeah,
and I
Jessica.
can take over. Yeah, I have maybe something to add to the philosophical question as seen as Andrew. And I think that's an oversight that we often do, and especially in early stage, we don't start the recruitment process by writing out the scorecard of what we are looking for. And it's a practice that is quite well known, but not really applied when looking for someone. And it's always why we fail, is that we don't work on what we look for from the beginning. And it can change. It can be edited as we meet people. But the number of times where I had to work with teams, and not just in tech, but that were just looking for, like, to meeting people and making up their minds as they go, it's terrible. It's terrible for the candidates. It doesn't help you in your recruitment process at all. It takes so much time. It's terrible for the candidate experience and your employer brand. You should always start with writing out the scorecard, and the scorecard will let you know what you are looking for. If you use always the same template with the hard skills, the soft skills, the outcome of the role in 6 months, etc. Like maybe the career plan of that role, and think about the role and not think about candidates as you meet them. Like, oh, I like that thing in that candidate, or I like this thing in this candidate. You will never find the perfect candidate anyway. So you need to start with what you are looking for. In French, we have a saying, and I don't know the translation in other languages, but we always, as recruiters, we are always mad at teams looking for the lamb with 5 feet, the sheep with 5 feet. I don't know if you say 5 legs. Sorry, le mouton à 5 pattes in French, and it's just impossible. It doesn't exist. So you have to be realistic and start with this scorecard. It's necessary. It will help you if you do it. If you do the recruitment by yourself, it will help you if you outsource to an agency. But if you don't do that work, you're going to waste so much time.
Yeah, completely agree. You need to know what you're looking for. And because great is a different thing for every company. It's different at a point in time, and even different people in the same company will have a different perspective.
Because you will need the alignment as well, because you might involve more than one people in a recruitment process, even if you are at an early stage. And if you have a detailed document about what you're looking for, then you can collaborate with the other stakeholders in the process to really align on what you're looking for. And so I consider it, I know it's a lot of work from the startup when you have to do it, like managers never want to do it, but it's valuable in the end.
Yeah, definitely much easier to do it then than when you've interviewed 2 candidates and you're arguing about which one is the best fit. You'd rather have worked that out in advance. I guess this comes to another of the challenges that startups might face, which is that you are engineering hires. You're competing with the likes of Google and Meta and Amazon, who also want to hire what they perceive as the best engineers for their roles. So how, as a startup, how do you stand out? How do you attract those people to you? I'm going to go in reverse order this time. So Jessica, if you're happy to take that one about how we compete for talent as startups, how we find those people and make them want to apply to us instead of to any other company.
Yeah, that's a tough question, because it is a very competitive market for sure. This is why one of the topics that is usually overlooked, and it shouldn't, is employer branding. And I think it's very valuable to think about it from the start, like, who are we, what do we stand for, what are our values, etc. And I'm thinking of one French company that was really good at this. They're called Algolia. They're pretty big right now, but they were like only 10 people, and from the beginning they wrote all of that, all of their employee branding principles, etc. And that's why they could communicate to candidates during the process, even like from the time when they apply, that they could let them know, this is who we are. Do you feel that you match us, and all that? So this is something that we did quite late in the history of Ornikar, but we got great results. Like as soon as people applied, they received their candidate handbook. It doesn't have to be a very complicated document. We did it ourselves, like with our own resources. It was just a few pages to let people know who we were, what to expect from the recruitment process. That was a big thing, like how many stages in the recruitment process, what kind of method do we use, etc. And it was very impactful in terms of candidate experience, because we did send a survey every time the recruitment process was over, and even people who didn't get selected enjoyed their time being a candidate with us. So this is something I could recommend, and it doesn't have to be costly. You don't have to advertise a lot on LinkedIn or anything. You can do something very clean in-house, like a Notion page. There are some examples online, and I think it pays off.
Awesome, thank you. Lots of good tips there. Andrew?
Yeah, I think candidate experience is kind of the summary of what Jessica maybe was saying there in my mind, and I think candidate experience is incredibly important. I think a lot of people just don't think about filters very much, and so they think, hey, we got 200 applicants and 75 of them progressed to the first round and 20 of them progressed to the second round, and they go, great, we are doing a good job of hiring. And they forget that between that 20, the 200 to the 70, you might have lost the top 20% of your candidates because they've opted out of continuing. And so I think with that principle in mind, that we want to make sure that none of the best candidates drop out of our funnel. We think a lot about candidate experience. So, for example, I think I really like the idea of a candidate handbook. We don't do that. And what we do is I meet everyone. I am the first person everyone meets, and I sit down with a 30-minute call, and I spend the first 10 minutes, I explain who we are, what do we do, who's Komi. I talk about the genesis of the company. I do a product demo. I then talk about our vision for the future, our current sort of 6 to 12 month plans, and then I give them 15 to 20 minutes to ask me any questions that are top of mind for them. And the end of that call is me saying to them, so would you like to continue in this process? And what I've found is that maybe 10% of people go, you know what, now I know about you guys, it's not a fit, I'm not interested. The other 90% say, wow, like you're clearly really investing in finding the right people, like you've made the company sound really exciting. I love the fact that I've had, my first call with the company is with the COO, the last call they have is with the CEO. And that's really another non-testing related call, just like, let's really set your expectations. Throughout the process, they get plenty of emails that we've all automated that tell them exactly what the next stage will be, and I tell them exactly how many steps there's going to be. So, we try really hard on candidate experience. And of course, candidate experience extends beyond the interview into the offer stage and into the onboarding. So that we also have the opportunity to be able to come to the office, meet the team. We don't do exploding offers. You get the chance to meet us before you accept. And then we obviously take you in to meet the team and have lunch with people before you start to try and make your first day a bit less scary. When you join, we have a really detailed onboarding plan that says, these are all the admin things that you need. So here's the passwords you need. Here's how to book meeting rooms. Here's a glossary of terms. We give people, a hoodie and stuff on their first day to try and make them feel a little bit like, cool, like these guys are excited for me to be here. And so I think that experience that we're trying to hone down on really helps us to win great people. Because basically, as long as great people don't fall out of your funnel, and as long as great people will accept your offer at the end of the process, you have a perfectly good chance of hiring great talent, even against competition from big companies and other startups. I think the one thing I actually would say on that, final observation, is the Amazons and the Googles of this world just aren't our competition. If you want to join a startup and you're excited about the idea of that growing with that company and being employee number 5 and becoming employee number 50, you're just not interested in going to Amazon. It's equally, if you want to go to Amazon and have the big company kudos and brand, you would hate being at a startup. So I think our competition for hiring is much more other sexy Series A high growth companies than it is big tech. We're in a different game.
And Andrew, if I can add if I can add something, sorry, I'm thinking you're absolutely right, because Amazon famously has a 2 months recruitment process. So we are not competing with that, because we are not taking 2 months to hire people. And also you were talking about the filtering applicants and all that. I cannot name that client, but we are working with one of the biggest companies in France, and they do not sort out their applicants because they have too many and they consider that they are not good enough. So they rely on agencies and all that, but they don't even take care of the applicants that apply to their website. So yeah, we are definitely not competing with them at all. And in terms of candidate experience, we had a candidate recently that had a great first interview, and the second interview, the other manager was describing a totally different job because they didn't do the scorecard thing and the job description thing, etc. So this is very bad for the candidate experience. So we can really differentiate ourselves from this type of experience, because those big companies rely on their name, and I'm not sure they have like a better attrition than us or a better closing rate than us in terms of recruitment figures. Sorry, Roxana, I interrupted you.
No. Like, very valuable insights. I just wanted to like echo what Andrew said. Like, I wanted to say exactly, like, I would not, that's not the market and the target we are looking at either. And for very good reasons. I think that in the last 5-6 years, there is so much awareness, and good awareness around, like the life in a tech environment, in a startup, and people with specific mindset are actually drawn to it. And I believe that in terms of differentiator, right, because this is where we were, Edtech specifically has a super powerful mission. And that is like, like that's the gel, that's the magnet for people who really want to, like make a true big impact in overall education. And what I found out working at Labster before was that this was like #1 criteria and #1 filter, like people who are really connected to your mission. So I would say that that's the key differentiator, but obviously it's our duty to leverage that, the values and everything that comes with it. The second piece that I would actually mention is the equity. And that is, again, a differentiator, because that's, like having the skin in the game for a long term. And if you are employee number 5, 7, 20, that might convert over the years in really, like I don't want to say your retirement plan, because like no fake promises in here, but this can be something that will have a substantial return on your future overall. Plus the fact that you can innovate, you have autonomy, you have creativity, like just, a white canvas you can write on. That's a unique opportunity people are craving to take advantage of. So it's clearly a good differentiator to start with and to sign up for.
Awesome. I think those were all fantastic points. I have no notes. That was great. I think it would be interesting to talk a bit about process and how Andrew's touched on this already, and Jessica too, about the candidate experience and the need for being fast and responsive, and also being close to the people, that the candidate should be close to the people they're going to be working with directly. Can you just talk about the interview and assessment process that you would recommend and use internally? Like, Andrew, I know you've been doing some iteration around this, so maybe you can go first.
Yeah, certainly. I think the things that we're trying to solve for are, we want to find the right people. We want to make sure they accept at the end of that process. And so those sort of 2 criteria have kind of guided our thinking. The first thing, so maybe I talk about the process, now talk about how we operationalize it to make it run well. The process is, you meet with me for a 30-minute call. It is an intro to Komi call. I do the pitch, I do the product demo, I then answer questions, and at the end, I say, would you like to continue? The only things I ask of the candidate are literally admin questions around salary expectations, right to work, expectations around hybrid working and remote working, etc., just so that no one goes through the process, gets to the end and goes, but you can sponsor my visa, right? And then we're like, actually, that's not what we're expecting. Then we have a 2-round process. We have a behavioral interview, takes an hour. and we do with that a what you might call more academic style technical test, so more to do with like theory of coding, like, hey, I want you to do something with you know, these 2 or 3 coding problems, which are a little bit more like what I would experience at university, where you kind of just demonstrate that you know how to code. And then if you go through the behavioral screen and the coding screen, you then go into the final round, which was with a different engineering manager, where you do more like a real life coding problem, which is going to be something more like, this is something we're currently dealing with in our app. This is the kind of thing you might be given as your day job. Show that, you know, walk us through how you'd approach it. So we have the slightly more theoretical and the slightly more practical side of the engineering testing, as well as the behavioral. And then the final round is half an hour with the CEO. Again, not an assessment, but more focused on making sure they really get the chance to ask the questions, because we want people to know what they're getting in for. There's no value of people coming into the company going, this isn't what I thought it was, and leaving again. So that's more like a level set. And in terms of how we operationalize it, we use an applicant tracking system, which triggers automated emails when people move through the funnels. The automated emails have had a little bit of thought in them, so they really line up what people can expect and how they can prepare for the next rounds. And we use Calendly to allow people to book directly into the diaries of the interviewing managers. And we also make sure that the engineering managers know that these things don't get rearranged. There's no like, oh, I'm really busy today, so I don't fancy doing an interview. Like, the recruiting is our number one priority, so they don't get the chance. Similarly, you know, when I'm pitching people, I've had days where I've done, you know, 6 back-to-back pitches, and I feel like I've had the same conversation. I'm going slightly insane when I'm doing that day after day, but it's the most important thing we can do for the success of the company. So we just make sure it happens. So a bit of a long answer there, but we have that 2-3 step process. We put senior management in the front and the back of that process. We make sure people prioritize it, and we use as many automations as we can to make sure things move quickly and that candidates get good, kind of responsive and time sensitive understanding of what's going on for their particular application.
Awesome, thank you. Jessica, do you have anything to add, or any differences in your approach to what Andrew's talking about?
No, I think automation is really the key, and it's something you can do very easily with tools like Calendly and all that. If you don't have an ATS, like a recruitment software in place, you have to make it easy for candidates to move from one stage to another, and also for you. And I absolutely agree that recruitment is your team's number one priority. So there's no outsourcing to be done. And I'm also saying that now that I work for a company where we have a recruitment branch, we see our clients delaying those meetings and rescheduling and all that. This is terrible for candidates, because they do have a choice. And even with the current financial crisis and all that, recruitment is still quite a competitive market. So I think the good thing is also to let people know how many steps they can expect from you, like what the aim of each interview, like the content of each interview. And also, I think, Andrew, you said that, but the first conversations are about technical topics, right? You do start with technical and you end with a more behavioral, cultural fit with the CEO. That's what you do.
Sorry, I wasn't clear there. What we do is we do there's 2 steps of our assessment of the candidate. So the first round is me pitching. The first round is a 2-hour round, which is split 50-50 between behavioral questions, which Jessica, to your earlier point, are to do with the behaviors and characteristics that we want for the specific role that we've predefined in advance. And then we have the other 50%, the more sort of like coding technical questions, but that are what I would call theoretical. So more like, can you manipulate this input in a certain way, write a function that does X, Y, Z? So then we basically assess from the very start, like, are they roughly the right technical bar? Are they behaviorally what we want based on the needs of the role? And then the final round is another technical test with another engineering manager, which is more of like a calibration when you've done a theoretical and a practical technical test. So we make sure that the candidate is not just theoretically strong, but actually sort of can do the work that we want them to do day to day. The goal of bringing the behavioral stuff really early is I would rather have someone who had a fantastic attitude and was a really great, person to have in the team, and they're going to learn and scale, and they need a bit of help on engineering, but they're good, but they can be better, versus the other way around, someone who I have low trust in and who is disruptive to the team, even if they are a rock star. And maybe this is the thing that at Uber we kind of learned, right? We got criticized for being brilliant jerks a lot. And I think the thing that was most telling about the company, Uber, is we got criticized for being brilliant jerks. And the response within the company was, hey, cool, everyone thinks we're brilliant. And they didn't realize that actually being jerks might not also be a good thing. And so the learning I want in the process to bring that behavioral stuff quite early is that's just as important to me, if not more, than whether they can code or whether they can work in our kind of technical environment.
Yeah, for sure. What I was saying was, it's good that for technical people that they do have at the very beginning of the process, that they do have a technical conversation, because that's what keeps them interested as well. Like I know that the traditional way of hiring, and I see that with my more like traditional clients in France, but they tend to do like at least 2 first HR interviews with candidates. For me, that doesn't work. It doesn't make any sense. This is not how fast-paced companies work. And you do need to make them interested in your product, especially when you are like a B2B company with a product that they don't know, etc. You do have to do that pitch effort that you do, Andrew, and also give them a sense of how technical the job is going to be, how hard it's going to be. Like I worked at a deep tech company called Shift Technology. We did software for insurance fraud, and so the level of technicity required from our engineers were very, very high, and people like that. They like that they failed at the test. They like that they found the test very difficult and they enjoyed it. So I think there was one candidate that thought it was not hard enough, and he did quit he did not go throughout the whole process. Maybe it was too clever for us, I don't know. But the majority of the candidates were happy that they were in a difficult position during the process. So and some companies maybe don't dare to do it. They are afraid to scare people away, and I think it's a very good filter, on the contrary.
You're on mute. Hywel,
Oh my goodness, what a fail. Roxana, do you have anything to add to that?
Just to sum up a bit because I'm obviously very much in alignment with Andrew and Jessica here. And I have a funny story, speaking about the candidate experience, right, which is obviously critical. We could see, looking at the data, we could see a pattern for the last 12 months when we have a lot of engineers who rejected initially our offer because of counter offering in their current role that are coming back to us. And we obviously we are very happy, and they already passed, they rejected us once, obviously they passed all our tasks, but they came back because of that candidate experience, right? They felt the community sense, they felt the respect, they felt that things are happening and going in the direction that is very much aligned with their values. And that, for me, it's one of the best signals. If the people who let you for different reasons are coming back, it means the spark was there. But on automating the process, we also have very clear, we have a standardized interview process, right, with 4 steps. It needs to be short and sweet. It's high level, it's the hiring manager step. After that, we have a subject matter expert who is deep diving in the technical side. We have a culture add piece, making sure that the bias, it's not something we want to entertain in there. And the final interview, which usually it's a business case sort of testing or any testing phase. We are trying to have this, obviously depending on the availability of the candidate, but with the initial preparation, with the playbook that Jessica was mentioning, until the offer stage, we are trying to move in less than 3 weeks. It should be a pretty swift process in there. But I agree. Otherwise, it's still a fierce competition for great engineers and talents out there. So we need to be on our toes.
Awesome, thank you. And before we move on, I want to draw the audience's attention to the fact that no one, I think, mentioned whiteboard tests, which used to be extremely popular for technical hires. And particularly, I think Google was a big advocate for them. Google did a lot of internal research and not soul searching so much as analyzing the data, and they discovered that that their whiteboard testing was turning away great candidates and was not searching for the qualities that they wanted. Some companies still do whiteboard testing, but it is not really recommended very much by anyone, as far as I see anymore. I want us to move on to a question from the audience. I am super pleased. Thank you so much, Patch, for sharing this question. At what point in your journey do you think about offering equity to new hires? Is this something any of you have done, and has it been successful? Are there any key points or areas to consider when thinking about this? Who wants to go first here? Andrew, you're unmuted, so let's start with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think Roxana, maybe you mentioned this about equity earlier. Like, we give equity to absolutely everybody, and I think it's really important. I think it's I don't think it's a silver bullet, because I think if you say, hey, look, you know, this equity is worth X, and you know, in this imaginary future that I can sell to you and get you excited about, it'll be worth Y. That's nice, but people are, I think the other side of the equation of the, like, hey, join a rocket ship, is imagine what it will do for your career and your personal development, that you can, you know, join this thing and it'll 10x and you'll be the first person, then you'll be a team leader and all this other stuff can happen. So equity by itself is not a silver bullet, but I do think if you are pitching someone, hey, you're going to join this early stage company and we're not worth very much right now, and you know, in the future you'll be worth more, and hey, why should you accept our offer that maybe isn't as high as like the market leading offer? Equity is a huge part of that. And I think it also is a big part of keeping people in the company, because if you're able to say, look how your equity has grown, you know, on the happy path where things are working, it's a reason for people not to leave. And so not only does, I think, help you attract people, I think it can help you keep people. And finally, I think it's also a really important part of treating people fairly, because you're kind of saying to people like, hey, come and help us build this thing that is going to be, you know, a bit of a risk. But if it works, it's going to be massive upside. I think if you want to treat people fairly, you should say, and you get some of that upside as well, because you're going to be a big part of this. So we give equity to everyone, and I'm a big advocate, as you can tell.
And I agree 100%. We are doing the same, especially having in mind that, like, pre-seed stage A, like from a compensation perspective, probably you cannot afford being highly competitive with the base and with the other benefits, and like, you know, just ramping up with the equity, that can be a really nice balance. And most of the people having in mind the autonomy, you know, like the great team spirit and the fact that they have their skin in there, it's like they contribute, they feel owners as well, that will do it, and it's going to be a really good package. So to everyone, I would say, like, obviously it really depends. Like at the beginning, you are going to work with freelancers, right? Like on the engineering teams, it's like you need to have a strategy around it, but usually we are granting equity for all the permanent full-time employees, with a specific percentage to differentiate also the impact that everyone is having in the organization, but everyone has a piece.
Okay, I'm gonna be the like the Debbie Downer of this conversation, because maybe it's linked to my French experience, but I did have to face some employees who didn't really understand the value of equity. So I would insist more on the education about how equity works, because nobody knows how it works. And so some people think it's very valuable, which can be true, but in a certain number of years. Some people don't take it into account at all. It really depends on the culture. I know that in the US, for example, it is mandatory, but in France, if you offer it, and especially to junior people, they absolutely do not understand how it works. And when every time you are going to do a fundraising round, people are going to show at your doorstep to expect some money. So there really need to be some education about how it works. Ideally, to have a software like Equify to show people their portfolio, like how long they have to wait to vest, etc. Because it's a really complicated topic, and so if you want to make it very impactful, you have to take that time at the offer stage and throughout their employee experience.
Yeah, completely agree with with everything everyone said, actually, about the need to educate the team. I guess you said in your question, Patch, about key points and areas to consider. Firstly, you'll want to give people options rather than shares. Options give people the option to buy shares at a fixed price. The price you fix now at a later date. Typically, you can give them a much lower price than your investors are paying, because they have for a variety of reasons. If you're in the UK, there is a tax incentive scheme called EMI that you might want to sign up for. Definitely get legal help with drafting this stuff, because it matters. It matters that your board has signed off on the options pool. Typically, options pools are between like 8 and 12% of the company. I think generally people give options to everyone up to at least Series B is the rule I see in startups. After Series B, people tend to be able to pay closer to market. And so potentially for more junior employees at Series B stage is the first people you hire who don't get equity. But that will vary by company. Some people will want everyone to be as bought in. And then one other point I'd make that Jessica touched on is vesting. The standard tends to be a 4-year vest with a 1-year cliff, which means that you don't vest any of the options over the first year. So they're allocated to you, but if you're at a company for less than a year, you don't get access to any of them. After that first year, full 25% of the options are now there, and you can pay to exercise them if you choose to. And then over the next 3 years after that, you every month vest another fraction of your options. That is the kind of typical setup. But again, consult a lawyer, use a service that will handle this for you, because it's complex, and if you get it wrong, it can mean bad things for the company, and it can also mean bad things for your employees. If you have accidentally not allocated those shares for them, then possibly when your company exits as a unicorn, it turns out that your employees don't get what they were promised, and that would be very bad, and you don't want that to happen. But thank you for your question. I hope that was valuable to you. Let's move on. We've only got 5 minutes left. Oh my goodness, the time has absolutely flown. I want to ask a question that I think is very engineering specific. Some engineers prefer to be lone wolves. They prefer to kind of sit on their own, churn out code all day, whereas some kind of really embrace the team aspect of engineering, and that is generally going to be more valuable for the company. How do you make a team be cohesive? What tools are you using? How do you encourage the engineering team to work as a whole rather than being a group of individuals? Roxana, I think you haven't started any of our answers yet. Let's hand over to you.
It's so funny. It's like 2.5 years ago, we were doing a survey if people would like to come back to the office. And well, obviously, what were the conditions? And I remember specifically our R&D team saying, even 1 day per month, if you are going to force us to come in the office, we will quit. So like it was such a very clear statement. And that was the setup at that specific company, right? The point is, there can be, right, and we can see that remote working setup. It's something that might come handy for most of the engineers. Bottom line, what we're trying to do in order to build the cohesiveness, we organize the onboardings in person. Like that's not mandatory, right? Like we have 3 days in-person program for everyone to build in, the leaders, the coaches, everyone. Everyone has a buddy for the first 12 months, which is really important. And after that, they either have a coach or a mentor. So they would have people to they have their tribe. We organize the retros in person, which I think it's really cool and important to have all the cross-functional people with the retros, taking the learnings and having 2-3 days. Obviously, we have the dinners and everything happening are really, really important. And on a quarterly basis, we are trying to build the teams, to put the teams together, either having hackathons or tech summits or product weeks. It's like any sort of retreats that would support this sense of belonging and people coming together, because we realize that community it's such an important factor for the engineering teams. Like it's a place where you want to be in because they like it and they want to chip in, they want to contribute. So I would say with the hybrid world, hybrid is working, but in-person intentional time, it's really important for bringing the lonely wolves together in a pack.
I recently saw an initiative that I like. I currently work at a company called platform.sh, and they do have a personal handbook that they communicate to everyone. So that's pretty cool. You can do it as a team or as a personal handbook that you can link to your Slack or something. And so you communicate to people about how you prefer to work, how you prefer to be contacted, everything about you. And so that it promotes the cohesion, and it lets people know how to interact with each other, taking into account all the diversity of personalities that can be in a company. And Platform is a full remote company, so there's no presence required. So they need to rely a lot on tools. And what I saw at Ornikar that worked a lot, but it was very ingrained in the culture, was the importance of everything being in writing. So that helped a lot, because even if you were absent for like you were on holiday or something, like you'd always know what was going on, because absolutely all the meetings were being prepared in writing. Like every time you would go to a meeting, you had a pre-read, pre-work, etc. And so that really helped, again, for people to really be efficient in a meeting and not to multiply meetings during the day, like having Zoom calls where everybody talks together and we don't have an outcome or something very clear at the end of the meeting. So written culture really helps, I think, and also again to promote the diversity of personalities and to make sure that everybody has a say and can be heard.
Awesome, Andrew.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I think it comes back similar to what I said before about there's more than one way to be great, right? I think, as long as you solve the problem, you can do it different ways. The system that Jessica has described sounds very sensible, and also sounds like my personal hell of like having to document literally everything, because I'm much more comfortable being like, hey, let's get two people in a room, quickly jam on something and go like, yes, that's the right decision, let's move forward. Whereas the idea of having to create this paper trail, which wouldn't work for me, but that I don't claim that is because the way I work personally would be the only way to run a company. I think
I'm from a legal background. That's why I like to have it. You're philosophical. I'm from the legal.
And I think this is the thing. Like you as long as you are like consciously finding a way to solve the problems that come from the organizational structure and what it implies, you can do it in multiple different ways. So, for example, for us, we've almost gone the other way of we kind of thought remote working is the future. Let's let the engineers work remotely. They're very welcome to come and spend some time with us. They don't have to. And almost everybody that we lost over an 18-month period was from that cohort of people that wanted to be lone wolves, like I'm happiest working remotely, like clearly you just didn't feel any cohesion towards us or interest in the mission. You'd talk to them, they'd have no idea what anyone else was doing or what the business was about. And then they left because someone gave them a 5K higher pay offer, which for me is mental, because if you believe in the company, that would never be enough. And so we've course corrected, and we're saying, well, you know what, we're going to have a monthly get together. Everyone in the company has to be in the office once a month, and it's the same day. They're going to come on this one Friday, and we're going to spend 2 hours going for a team lunch. We're going to pay for a really nice team lunch. We're going to mix up the teams, make people sit with people they don't know super well. We're going to run breakout sessions that are going to be, the things that the engineers want to talk about. So it might be the CEO giving a strategy update. It might be the engineers having a breakout session on, what is the definition of done or the correct way to document or whatever it is. But bring that together and then having an annual offsite and a Christmas party and a bunch of other stuff. Because I believe that if you build some social cohesion, a lot of it carries through into the remote world, because you'll have a bit of a banter at the start of a Zoom call, or you'll share a joke on Slack, or you'll know that XYZ person is close to getting engaged, and you'll be like, oh, holiday coming up, mate. Let's what's going to happen there? And you're able to have those more human moments than if you are literally the lone wolf that sits in his cupboard. Because if you sit in your cupboard, every job and every company is the same, right? You're just doing code for a random group of people that you don't know. And so I think to build off of Jessica's comment, it sounds like we've tried to solve the problem in almost a completely opposite way. But I think the key thing is that we are trying to consciously iterate towards something that builds social cohesion, so that then you can lean into that social cohesion that you built through the hard times or through the remote times. And hopefully we shall see that already seems to be paying some dividends for us, because people are coming for drinks more often, or having some jokes more often, or seeing each other outside of work more often, and starting to kind of build the kind of friendships that keep people in a company longer term.
Awesome. Those are all really great answers and approaches, everyone. I want to ask one more question of everyone. We're going to keep answers short, so this is going to be a quick fire, like 15 or 20-second answer question, but it's something that's super close to my heart because of what we do at Skillawell. I would like to know how everyone grows the talent in your team over time. So how do you take the people you have and make them better? Let's start with Andrew. You're unmuted, so unfortunately you get picked on.
Sure. So 20-second answer. We have a really rigorous feedback framework. So when we were smaller, we did every single person in the company gave me feedback on every single person in the company. And I anonymized it, synthesized it, and then presented it back to people. I have adopted the framework from Uber that's the T's and B's thing. These are the things you're great at. These are the things you could be better at. And I really tried to make that real by using tons and tons of evidence and quotes around each of those areas. And then we build out performance improvement plans for people that are nothing to do with like rating your performance level, but they're just like how you can be better. And then I tend to do monthly sessions with people to help coach them through it. So do their direct hiring managers. And I think that's been our focus. It's not training in the sense that I'm not going to teach you how to code better. We do that through peer coaching and through things like code reviews and stuff. It's much more to do with like, how do you get to the next level in your career? So if, for example, you're someone who doesn't speak up in meetings, we're going to talk about that a lot more than we're going to talk about, are you able to do code well? Because that's the thing that's going to help that person step up to a more senior level. So slightly longer than 20 seconds, but hopefully that gives some context.
Awesome. Jessica, can you go next?
Yeah, in France, we have like a legal obligation to train people. So we do have to spend a lot of our time and energy on that. And so what we usually do is that we work closely with the engineering team to know what they need, because it's always hard to find courses that are that match what we do in terms of like technical level and all that. So we often work on certifications, like granting them certification, all that, because it is important to give opportunities to grow and also work a lot on soft skills. I talked about that at the beginning, but it's something that everybody can benefit from, regardless we are from engineering or not, and help with cohesion and all that. So like we offer courses about communication skills, presentation, etc., so that people can learn new things and not just rely on peer coaching and all that, because you cannot monitor it as well as like a proper training plan. And again, because we have this obligation in France, we are used to setting this kind of monitoring in place.
Awesome. And then Roxana.
20-second bullet point answer. Real-time feedback, personal ambition plan, clear career competencies for each level. And after that, the implementation, which is the budget for the personal development, mentoring, coaching, and like the full training plan in place.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. I'm sorry we couldn't have a longer discussion about that, but I hope it was still useful. Hege.
Thank you very much, all of you, Jessica, Roxana, Andrew, and of course you, Hal. And thanks for everyone who's joined us for this first session of day 2 at the Edtech Startup Festival. Next session on marketing is on this afternoon at 3 p.m. UK time. And then we've got 2 final sessions tomorrow on exits and finance. So it's still not too late to sign up. I've just shared the link in the chat. And thanks again, and see you all soon.
Thanks so much, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.